Hello, everyone, and thank you for tuning in to our monthly roundtable, Bridging Business and Technology, a program designed for STEM grads. Today, we explore one of the most forward-thinking master's programs in business education, the Master of Business and Technology from Purdue University's Daniels School of Business. This is a program designed for a business leader who speaks the language of both data and strategy, who understands technology, but also knows how to apply it ethically, at scale, and with impact. I'm your host, Christy Blyza for Poets and Quants. Please feel free to use the Q&A function to submit any questions you have for our panelists, and I'll do my best to get to those at the end of the session. Joining us today are three panelists who represent the MBT from three differing perspectives. We have Mohammed Rahman, Daniels School Chaired Professor of Management and Director of the Master of Business and Technology. Hello, Mohammed.
Hello. Hi, Christy.
Great.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah. We also have Ramonda Deshande, a May 2024 graduate and part of the first cohort of the Master of Business and Technology program. Hi, Rama.
Hi, I'm Rama. Nice to meet you guys.
And we also have Warren Blanchard, Managing Partner of Potomac Strategy Consultants and Seven Elements Group, and a member of the MBT Advisory Board. Hello, Warren.
Hi, Christy. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, and thank you all for joining us today. We have a lively discussion ahead, so we'll just kind of dive right into, looking at the origins of the program, the why now, and why at Purdue. So let's start with you, Dr. Rahman. What inspired the development of Purdue's Master of Business and Technology, and what gap does it aim to fill in the graduate business education space?
Great question, Christy. So I know you guys probably think about this regularly at Poets and Quant that, the education is changing. Management education at the graduate level is changing in the past 5 to 10 years. Clearly, in the past, we talked a lot about MBA and why that was important to rise up and everything, right? But if you look at that, education is changing. It's because industry is changing. So if you look at the industry, how the industries are changing today, when you think about technology, it's it's changing industries not just in the tech firms, like the big ones we think about, like the household names like Meta, Google, Amazon, Apple. No, it's actually any industry you look at, right? Whether you look at pharma, you look at technology, manufacturing, you look at like banking, all of that is changing because of technology. So that basically means that education also has to account for that, and we need to do something to make sure we actually have the leaders that are going to thrive, that are in the next 10 to 20 years or 30 years or 50 years. And that thinking really evolves with all the programs. Now, at Purdue, we looked at our landscape. We had an MBA. It's a very well-known tech school, right? So it's an engineering-focused, business-focused school at the university. And when we looked at this, we thought, okay, we got to do this right, and we want to do this from scratch. So rather than trying to retrofit your existing portfolio, an MBA with a few courses from here and there, which is what many competitors are doing right now, many universities are doing, because the realities are different. They may have to evolve from what they have. They might have more constraints. And they may not have a strong sort of engineering prowess that we have, right? Technology prowess that we have. So we actually leverage all of that to create a degree from scratch that really brings the business knowledge and the technology knowledge together. The idea here is you actually learn how to apply technology to change the business world and as a society as a whole. And therefore, you actually know when to bring the product to market. What kind of product to even think about? Because you know what? We're going to be talking about product that we have no clue about in 5 to 10 years. How do you even think about ideation is important? What is important in that ideation? Do you just build without thinking about whether or not there is demand? So if you look at sort of like technology students like sciences or engineering, they would actually have great ideas on a lot of different innovations, but that's not always marketable, right? The business model around it has to be there. So what is a business model? And how does this business model change because of technology? So if you think of basic economics of supply and demand, the cost function, the cost is very different when you think about information goods, like technology-driven goods like AI, or if you think about like internet, that change the cost of generating or producing goods and delivering goods. What does that mean for business models and all of the things you do in terms of value creation, value capture? So we thought, okay, you know what? We need to actually create a program that speaks to all of that. So our graduates know how to actually take technology and change their business or come up with new businesses and business models that will disrupt existing industries or transform current business models. Both will happen, and I'm kind of excited to see that. And particularly when we think about AI, that's the new sort of general purpose technology we have, just like the internet we had in the past, computer in the past, steam engines before that, electricity, in between those. We're seeing a new technology that will totally change the business world. So you have to be ready for that. And that's what this degree is for.
Yeah, it's going to be very interesting to see what kind of, your grads start doing as you get more cohorts in relation to the new technology that's coming out. Warren, coming to the industry perspective then, what do you think employers are looking for that STEM grads may often lack? And how does the MBT intentionally bridge that gap?
Sure, Christy. Great question. I have a unique perspective because I started my career as an engineer. And so I can look at it from that perspective as well as somebody who's hired many engineers and or business students and other students from a STEM background. I think first off, most employers are really hiring somebody because of their potential. So when they hire somebody with a STEM undergraduate background, they're really looking for that person to come in and be able to use what they've learned in school and to use their potential and learn in that discipline. But as somebody progresses through their career, they're actually looking for them to expand their knowledge base, understand the business more holistically, and start contributing in a different way. So the MBT, I think, is a great bridge for somebody who has a STEM background because you are able to get a better grasp of all the other things that go on in a business. I admittedly went back to what is now the Daniel School of Business to get my MBA. And I went because as an engineer, I just didn't understand all the things that were going on. I went to Honda of America as an auto engineer, and there were just things that I just didn't understand. I knew supply chain, but what about everything else? MBT, I think, allows somebody to go back, stay anchored in the STEM, the person they are as either an engineer or a computer science person or somebody coming maybe from biology or chemistry or something like that, but then expand their knowledge base. You have to learn really the cause and effect of what you're doing. You can't stay myopic about what it is that's going on in your little world. You need to understand how it affects things downstream, if you will, and how things come to you from upstream, right? So I would say that it's the perfect fit of allowing somebody to stay who they really are, which is, again, a STEM person, but expand their mind, expand their experience, and understand more aspects of a business.
Oh, absolutely. And Rama, from the student perspective, can you talk a little bit about, more of your personal story, your background, and what motivated you to choose the MBT over other graduate business options like an MBA or an MS in analytics?
Yeah, so my undergraduate is in computer science. I have a Bachelor of Science. And so when it came to the MBT, I wanted basically business knowledge without losing that technical edge. I didn't want to feel like, computer science was something of the past and now I'm transitioning to business because I got that question a lot when I went to career fairs at Purdue, and employers at the time weren't as familiar with the concept of an MBT. And we noticed by spring career fair that they were. So that was an interesting transition as well. But yeah, they would say, oh, MBT, is that like an MBA? So you're pivoting from computer science? And it's like, no, I'm not pivoting. This is in addition to the computer science degree. So if anything, interviews going forward, when they ask me, hey, what do you bring to the table? I have a better answer for them because I understand the entire product pipeline and not just oh, if you give me something, yeah, I could probably code it for you, because that's kind of where I was at the end of my 4 years of computer science. So again, MBT kind of felt like a tech-focused MBA, not a watered-down mix, like Professor Rahman was talking about. And then also MS in analytics felt a little too specialized for me. So that was one thing. I wasn't exactly sure if I wanted to just go into data science and that side of things, but then an MBA was not tech forward enough. So I was struggling to find that exact balance. And before this program came to be, I was like, yeah, I'll get a couple years of work experience and then come back and see if I want an MBA. So this was a really nice way to get the 1 year, just one more year to get out the door, because my computer science was also at Purdue University. So I didn't have work experience in between. So 5 years out the door with a master's. And that was very motivating for me. Another thing I remember that was particularly reassuring to me was that the MBT was built with industry feedback. So when I looked at that flyer the first time, it was like backed by this company, backed by this company. And it was all built with the idea of what companies are looking for right now to bridge their gap, not just what is the gap in education. It was like, what is the gap in industry? And it seemed like the status quo was that software developers didn't know anything about like the management side of things or the business side of things, and then the business people didn't know anything about software. So this program really bridges that industry gap, not just in academia. And yeah, it gave me a good opportunity to stand out from other CS graduates, even
Okay.
though I was only a year more in school.
Yeah, just to put you on a spot a little bit, was there, what was the balance like in the program between, the management business side and kind of the technical side?
I would say it was pretty 50-50. We have a lot of core courses that make sure that you have a blend of both. For example, one class in particular is called Technology Driven Business. And in that class, you're examining case studies of various businesses and the decision points that allowed them to succeed or fail. It's like we talk about Airbnb, we talk about L'Oreal, and how like even when machine learning was first introduced, it took a long time for it to even be trusted. So it was like people that are high up in the company would say, oh yeah, like I know the demand is supposed to be XYZ, but I've been here for 30 years, so here's what I think. And they would just
Yeah.
kind of jump in and change the game. And so making sure that students are aware of the technologies that exist in terms of business and then how to apply them and where they should be applied was something that almost every class was covering. And then other classes were, like negotiations and organizations, leadership, like all your soft skills courses, we have those as well. And then you can pick a track. So there's 4 tracks within the program. And mine in particular was AI innovations. There's also technology commercialization and robotics and automation, just one more finance related. And when I chose the AI track, it meant that I could take more technical courses that are very aligned with what I wanted to do to balance out those purely soft skill courses as well.
Absolutely. Thanks for mentioning that, because it dives right, it kind of delves right into what we're going to next, which is kind of, the curriculum and the nuts and bolts of the program. Dr. Rahman, how do you ensure the MBT curriculum remains relevant and agile in a landscape where business and technology evolve so quickly?
Well, I think Christy, that's so I think Rama kind of already answered part of it, right? In her
Uh-huh.
answer. But let me tell you pedagogically how I think about this when I kind of design this program and as we kind of review this regularly. Number one, we believe that we have to impart knowledge that's timeless. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So the foundational thinking, the foundational knowledge in different courses, right? Even the courses that Rama was mentioning, um, these are very sort of foundations that will stay and that are sort of that have been true for the past 50 years, that will be true also going forward, right? Now, those foundations have wrinkles because
Mm-hmm.
of technological advancements and changes, right? So again, if we think about just simple competition, two firms competing, well, their competition might be different because now all of a sudden they no longer sort of are in this what we call pipeline business, where you have the typical general sort of supply chain focus, right? As a linear pipeline in the value, rather now they're in a platform like Airbnb, right? So all of a sudden, the business ingredients that you need to succeed here is more like, okay, do I have more network effects? So do I have more and more people using on both sides, host side and the guest side? Well, that has components on technology side because you
Mhm.
have to be very much user-friendly, user experience oriented, but it also has a lot of theoretical understanding of how this will all unfold in terms of the value that you create and the value that you capture, right? So we do that blend to make sure every course goes through rigorous thought process of first thinking about what the course should be foundationally based on, years of research many of the faculty members have done. So like most of our courses are done from scratch by us, not following a textbook, right?
Mhm.
And then I have the advisory board. So, people like Warren, they're very kind. We actually go to them and say, hey, can you give me some feedback on these courses? What do you think? What are you seeing? What kind of application are you seeing of these concepts and theories and these applications and the examples? How do we think about that, right? So that's that. Plus, a big part of our curriculum is experiential learning,
Yeah.
thinking about not just what happened. So certainly thinking about cases like L'Oreal business transformation is useful, right? Because it is changing, it's adding more and more data points to really collect data to be more AI ready. But at the same time, you can also look at things that are happening right now.
Yeah.
And students are asked to actually do class projects. So like, the first course they start with, we go through all of that is called computational business intelligence. Well, without business intelligence, no business can run. If you don't understand your consumers, you don't understand your competitors, you don't know what you're doing, right? But then you go out and you actually find problems that where you can apply the skills you just learned and sort of see how you can come up with a solution as a team. This is what you do when you go to work, right? So, and that's kind of how we make sure that our curriculum is constantly keeping up with what the students need, right? And
Yeah.
the other part is it's very intentional in terms of making sure we are reviewing and we're updating ourselves regularly. And there's core and there's elective. The beauty of electives are always on the cutting edge, right? So we right now have Gen AI and lots of things that are happening with Gen AI. Students can go take those classes. We actually have a class called Emerging Technologies and Business Model. That's the toughest class to teach because my
Ah.
intention for that class is you look at the unicorns in the
Uh-huh.
past 2 years, look at their underlying technologies and how they're changing business models. That's what you teach the students. So it's a tough cookie to, prepare and sell and, uh, teach compared to your accounting or finance courses where these rules are kind of constant for many, many years, right? But I think that's the fun. People who are teaching these classes, they're very dedicated. They love it. This is what they live and breathe. That's kind of why this program is where it is.
Yeah, I imagine it's going to be evolving as quickly as the business technology as we move
Yep.
forward. So Rama, what's been kind of the most surprising or maybe challenging shift from kind of your STEM-centric background and mindset to a business tech kind of hybrid mindset?
Yeah, I think I noticed this from day one, in that computational business intelligence course, but it's the idea that in STEM courses or in my computer science courses in particular, there were very clear answers. You were either right or you were wrong.
Hmm.
And business is a lot more of a gray area because you're always balancing trade-offs. So that's something I noticed right away. It wasn't, oh, yes, you're correct, or no, you're wrong. It's, can you justify it? So learning to justify those solutions beyond just being technically correct was something that we started covering from the ground up, basically. So I started finding myself asking questions like, is this strategically sound? Is this financially sound? Not just, is this correct? Because that could be subjective even in the business world. Um, and so it more just required a mindset shift of like, not just can we build this product, but like, should we? Is it meeting market needs? Is it, are you keeping up with the consumer? So that was, I think, the most surprising change. And I'll share just a little bit of on a tangent of what was the most surprising shift from a STEM classroom to a business classroom. And the answer to that one would be that the STEM classroom for undergrad was just massive. There's so many students. The professor doesn't know you by name. It's very hard to keep track of the students. And I noticed that going to a grad program that already filters down a lot of the volume of the class, I guess. But specifically in MBT, I noticed that since these courses are being created newly, the professor is really invested in improving the curriculum. And I noticed that I'll walk into class and it'll just be like, hey, Rama. And I'm like, wow, I got to pay attention today. So that was something I really enjoyed out of the business tech hybrid courses as compared to the STEM ones I was used to.
Oh, wow, that's great. Kind of building on that a little bit, Dr. Rahman, are there any like interdisciplinary approaches or teaching methods built into the program that you kind of believe help STEM students kind of think more like business leaders?
Well, certainly. I think, first of all, a lot of the STEM grads, they often are great problem solvers, but they think of as an individual contributors, right? So I gotta push this, get this to my next deadline, and get this to whatever the next milestone is, and that's what I have to do, right? Whereas in real business, especially when you think of business decision making, as you think of management, right? Whether, even if you go into product management as somebody with a technical background, you have to understand this part of business decision making where it's a team that has to actually work together to produce everything. Even if you think about a product, like if you think about a car, I think Warren was talking about a car. A car today is no longer a mechanical product. A car today is all about a digital product.
Right.
So a car today requires more of MBT grads, perhaps, to be more successful in the market than actually having mechanical engineers. And that's because a car is an experience today. And that experience requires getting the sensors from your seats and making sure massaging is working well. Your mood is sensed and your music is playing well, right? Your car knows what kind of sort of terrain choices you have and all of that, your maintenance and all of that. This requires a lot of digital things to come together, mechanical engineering to come together. And that means these people who are going to be in this workforce, they must understand how to work together on a project, right? How do we work across projects? And also, how do we negotiate?
Yeah.
Because you know what? We have to negotiate. Everybody will have great ideas, but there will be only so much you can charge the customers. So something has to go. There will be only so much capacity the car will have, whether it's the digital capacity in terms of data bandwidth, whatever you want to think about, right? Computing power to actually think about what algorithms you can run. All of that, you have to have that thinking as a whole business model, right? So we take that seriously in almost all the classes and as a curriculum, as a program, right? As a core curriculum. So individual classes, you have projects, you have individual work, but you have teamwork and you have team projects. In terms of like the whole program, you have these classes where we intentionally put students to think about negotiation, right? And then we also say, you know what, there is a capstone project where you actually go and work on a real problem and try to see how your knowledge comes to fruition exactly there. You make the mistakes without, having big penalty like, you know what, your job is at stake, right? So that's kind of experience we want to make sure. So this interdisciplinary nature is very important for students to think about because, from engineering, when you think about this, yes, you will have vertical integrated project, VIP projects and engineering classes, right? So that is something happens, but it doesn't really bring the whole commercialization mindset to it, right? So there's a lot of that. So we're actually thinking, seeing a lot of students interested in those kind of classes. If you're interested in tech commercialization, you actually go talk to VCs, you make pitches, you actually have to do the work rather than just thinking in theory what might happen. I think that's sort of like how we make sure this interdisciplinary training is there for the students.
Yeah. Kind of beyond that, are there any other kind of just like typical limitations that you see, with someone from a heavy quant or STEM background when they're trying to go into those business decisions, and how does the program overcome those? You've kind of answered, but if there's anything else to add.
Sure. I mean, I guess I'm going to build up on something Rama said. And by the way, I came from a computer science background as well, right? So,
Uh-huh.
the world is like, without, I guess with AI and LLM, we now have some sense of a stochastic nature, right? So people know what is hallucination because there is something called probability that plays out. But in sciences, mostly there is no thinking about probabilities, right? There is no stochasticities that we people think about. We want more like a very deterministic, very structured sort of thinking in sciences, right? You have formulas, you have mathematics, this will lead to, so provenance is there that will lead to some kind of output that you look at. When you think about our sort of MBT program, that provenance still is actually useful because we still want, so this is why a tech focused school is so important, right? A technology focused school would say, I still want that mathematical rigor, that technological rigor, where technological correctness is there. But now all of a sudden, I want you to think about, what if this assumption is not true? What if this is what happens? What if this is how your consumer responds? So how game theory would play out, right? As you think about, like, as a computer science or a STEM mindset or an engineering mindset, you don't think about a response from someone else. You take a deterministic world, you take the world as is, and you build something. But in a business world, people are responding all the time. So that mindset change is super important. Whether it's a consumer, they will change, they'll respond based on usefulness, user experience. They'll change based on the offering from your competitors. And your competitors will come up with different barriers. By the way, policymakers would also change. And they'll change the business environment. So tech governance and regulation is important. If you don't understand that, you're building AI solutions that might not be even marketable, right? Or you might get into hot water or legal trouble, right? So all of that thinking has to come together. I think that shift is what we really need for students to understand. And I think that's the biggest shift that happens in the minds of the STEM students.
Absolutely. Rama, kind of going along with this kind of technical shift, or mindset shift, can you kind of talk about maybe either a specific project, class, or moment that really kind of you noticed the connection between the technical skills and the business strategy?
Yeah, so in one of my classes, I believe it was the computational business intelligence one, we basically were given a pretty open-ended project. It was just pick a company and then extract some data from it and then come to some business insight. Like it was really that vague and it was kind of run with it as far as you can. So that project really stuck with me. My team, it was a small team. We worked with Indeed data and we extracted the company reviews. So basically from the top 100 tech companies, we extracted some like things that people were saying about it. And what they liked about the company, what they didn't like about the company. And then we started analyzing all of those reviews from Indeed.com. So it first started with just like cleaning them, then analyzing them, and then we started doing some actual like machine learning, natural language processing on this data. So this was all pretty typical. This is exactly how computer science runs, right? But then like when it actually came to modeling the data, then it was like we're finding real world problems in what people are communicating through their reviews. So we found that like certain employees in departments were leaving more often because there was no more room to advance. So that was a problem the company could have, considered before they were losing all their most valuable employees that are, if you think about it, like they're leaving because there's no place to advance. Those are your most skilled top talent of the company. Those are the people you want to retain. So that was a pretty cool, like, attrition versus retention project. And so we realized that overall, like, job satisfaction was a huge, like, predictor of whether somebody was staying or leaving the company. So then we came to the actual business part, which was recommendations on how to improve this problem we just discovered. So it was like recommending things like internal career like progression or like mobility, revisiting candidates that you've interviewed to make sure they're adjusting well into the coming into the company, and then better tracking of like their exit interviews. So that was cool. So it wasn't just like the technical analysis for the sake of it, because that's what a lot of computer science felt like. It was like, can you do it? But this was more like, how can we actually inform the company policy? How can we actually improve retention? How can we solve this problem that we figured out exists with data? And that basically affects the bottom line instead of just kind of brushing around the surface. So I think I was able to sort of connect the dots, like, okay, here's how data and strategy are influencing decisions that helps make the business run better. And it was the first time I felt like I was not just doing something like learning something technical, but it was also like strategic and people oriented at the same time, not just the back end logic.
Absolutely. And are you using this kind of blend of technical and strategic in your work now?
Yeah, so start work now this coming June, so I can't fully answer this question, but I can say that it was something that was talked about in my interview. Like I mentioned earlier, when they asked me, what do you bring to the table? I did not have an answer for that until it came to MBT, where I could definitely tell them like, okay, this is how I would propose a project. Here's how I see it playing out. Here's the 5-year lifespan of this project. And I see that that's completely transformed my thinking, and not just, oh, this seems like a cool project, let's, put it to work.
Yeah,
Like Professor Raman said, thinking about the technology and regulations, thinking about the financial aspect of it was something that was completely new.
absolutely. And bringing Warren back into the conversation here, we're going to kind of explore, the kind of leaders the program is creating, and why that matters in today's economy, especially kind of from the industry side. So, Warren, how do you see the MBT graduates shaping leadership in tech-driven sectors 5 or 10 years from now?
Sure, great question. Before I fully answer that question, I want to touch on a couple of things
Yeah.
that both Muhammad and Rama spoke about. And this is part of the answer. Uh, in the business world, you need somebody or people that can be good leaders and managers of very technical people,
Mhm.
because we are taught as engineers, as computer science, et cetera, to solve a problem, right? And it's fairly discrete. What I believe MBT graduates will be coming out now, 5 years, 10 years down the road, they will be able to plug in and help manage that talent, if you will, because they'll understand the algorithm, they'll understand the problem set, if you will, but they'll also see how that discrete solution plugs into the bigger puzzle, if you will,
Yeah.
right? The other thing I see NBT graduates being are almost translators of innovation, if you will, because there are a lot of people in the C-suite that can manage a business very well, but as we are moving into something, a space where everything is influenced and impacted by technology, you need somebody coming out of a program like this that can be that translator, if you will. 20 years ago, you couldn't have told me that I was going to order food and have it delivered to my house within 30 minutes, right? You go to the grocery store, you buy your food, you prepare your food, you eat it, right? Now, with DoorDash and Grubhub, et cetera, it's all on, it's all here on your phone. So everything is constantly changing. And the graduates of EBT will be those not just change agents, but also, again, the people who can translate what that change means, how to optimize the data that you're receiving, both from your own performance, your own balance sheet, your own P&L, but also look at what the data is coming in from competition, et cetera, and how to synthesize that information and then optimize it to be better, both again, internal and external inputs.
Absolutely. Yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, and to finish out, just a couple quick points. I see MBT alumni being the leading digital transportation transformation, leaders of digital transformation initiatives, the launching new ventures based off of their uh, what they learned in undergrad, what how they work, and then what they've learned and honed and refined as in the MBT program. And being able to blend uh, analytics, business strategy, and not least ethical leadership all into one and becoming great chief product officers, heads of digital strategy, VPs of innovation, and you name it.
Absolutely. And I think kind of along that, you're also going to want in this tech world leaders that are, that can lead ethically, human-centered leadership. How do you think the MBT plays in that, Warren?
Sure. I think MBT program recognizes that leadership isn't just about what you can build, but about why and how you build it and what's behind it. It's very important to emphasize ethical frameworks, understand what your stakeholders' interests are, as well as be empathetic to that, um, and how inclusive innovation needs to be. It fosters a human-centric mindset. It also encourages future leaders to consider the social and ethical implications of their decisions and how it's going to impact not just the company, but also technology and the future of business.
Absolutely. Rama, do you have any advice that you would give, a STEM student who's unsure whether they kind of belong in a business program?
Yeah, I do. And like I used to feel that way as well 1 year ago today. But I think I realized over the course of this program, and I was kind of already sold on it, but by the time I got in, which is that STEM teaches you how to solve the problems, but business teaches you which problems are worth solving. So if you're technically sharp, you're already halfway there. Business is just giving you your context and your direction. So you don't have to give up that technical side. You're just expanding it, which is what I wish I was told coming into the program, and I was very pleasantly surprised that this was the case. So it wasn't like I heard my professor saying this, and I'm gonna sell it like it's my own. The MBT isn't about turning coders into consultants, it's about turning builders into leaders. And I really liked that line because I think that encompasses it perfectly. So if you want your ideas to make it beyond the code base, and if you want a seat at the decision-making table, this program is how you get it. So 100% you belong, especially if you're, curious, you're driven, you have the developer mindset, but you want your work to have some real impact. This is how you get it.
Absolutely. Dr. Rahman, we do have a few more minutes. Do you mind just taking a minute to kind of describe maybe, the nuts and bolts of a program, how long, what kind of student, you think is the right fit, and just tell us a little bit more about how it all works.
Sure, definitely. I think first of all, this is a program that recognizes that we have time, like the time you spend in a program, that's an opportunity cost, right?
Mhm.
So if you're gonna be in a program for 2 to 3 years, that's an opportunity cost in terms of what your lifetime earning might look like, right? But at the same time, if it does not shift your income potential, right? So like think about wherever you are today, and a year after you do this program, if you're doing residential or if you're doing online, 2 to 3 years after you finish, if it doesn't shift your sort of that trajectory, and that shift could be, in terms of like it could be an intercept, meaning like there could be a difference from where you are to like just a base difference right away. But I think that the bigger thing people should think about is, well, whether or not it's going to actually change my slope. How
Right.
fast do I actually grow? And and probably the second order derivative for all the STEM students, right? So think about like, like how that changes, right? Um, I think that's kind of what this program has in mind. So this is a program that's designed to be finished if you're residentially there within a year, right? So it is 36 grade hours. You could do it online in probably about 2 years, even if you're doing it part time, right? So that's the first thing. The second thing is it starts with courses that builds on what you know from a STEM centric mindset, right? So it actually takes that technological strength you have, right? Whether, whatever that science mindset you have, it helps you because, we are not running a program that's just high level talking about strategic decision making. There are many MBA programs like that, right? I mean, this is how MBAs used to be and is today in many, many large MBA programs, right? You take a lot of cases, you do some analysis, you don't necessarily think about a provenance of the technological base. You just take it, oh, it's done.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas, we challenge students to say, you know what? You got to make sure that's done because your capability is there. You tell me that you can actually do that problem or mathematically show me that, that actually makes sense. And then tell me what is the strategic sort of, implications of all of that, right? So I think that's kind of what happens. So the courses, we start with courses like economics of technology market that really gives you the foundations to think about how economics work because business is all about economics, right? So supply and demand sounds simple, but how do they come together? How do I price? Where do I price? What is my market share? What market do I go after, right? So all of that stuff. We also start with computational business intelligence. So we say, you know what? You got to have business intelligence, as I was saying earlier, but use computational power to do this at scale efficiently and be much more precise because that's important to really understand different parts of business logically has basically three parts, right? So the cost function, like how do you really produce the product, the profit function, how do you really sell and bring the money, and the logic, how do you connect the two things, right? So like how the cost and the profit, they'll come together to give you the virtuous cycle where you actually make money. So that's where we start. And then we move on to the next semester. In the residential program, we think about digital product design. Again, go back to your car, go back to whatever else you think about. You have to think about how this product should be designed. How do we really think about software as a way to enable competitive advantage? That comes into DevOps. Because you could be any kind of industry you are in, any job you're in, today software is not just for as you're using like whatever software, Word or micro, your browser, whatever. Yeah, there are sort of enablers of doing some operational efficiency, but more and more, as we think about Grab Hub, if you think about DoorDash, if you think about BMW, sort of like the user experience software, these are all products are really relying on their software to really bring the value and capture the value. So we kind of go through that nuts and bolts in the DevOps class. And then we have technology-driven business that really brings together in a very, very conceptual way how technology changes the business models.
Yeah.
What kind of business models are enabled? How can you disrupt, right? And when we think about AI, well, human-centric AI is very important, right? I mean, the humans who know how to use AI will rule the humans who don't use AI. That's my
Yeah.
conviction. That's why I always tell my students, right? And today you have to know how to work along with AI and some human colleagues.
Mm-hmm.
When I talk about that
100%.
team management, when I talk about that negotiation, you may be negotiating with an AI agent
Big time.
whose owner is a human, or your AI agent is actually negotiating with another AI agent whose owner is probably Warren, right? So that's kind of what you have to understand. You have to kind of get around that to be ahead, to be that future ready, right? And then from there, we go to tech strategy, where it broadly talks about the tech landscape. And again, when we hear tech, no, we're not talking about just the Google and the Meta. No, we actually rarely use those examples in our classroom. It's your other companies that are thinking, your banking sector that's actually having a tech strategy to change itself, right? And mergers and acquisitions and all of that. And then we talk about emerging tech and business models, where we talk about the very current model. So today we're talking about all the LLMs. They're actually allowing all the agents, they're allowing a lot of business model changes. We're already seeing that. If you think about even the education business, this is changing. Now we're talking about having TAs, teaching assistants that are live 24/7 answering questions. How does
Yeah.
that business model change, right?
Wow.
And then tech governance and regulations. All of a sudden, Google is found to be a monopoly in ad space for AdWords, right? What does that mean? You have to understand why that's happening, how your technology focus plays out around policy and governance. How do we govern ethically AI? How do you think about privacy? There's so much data that you have to capture, and companies are capturing to enable AI. Well, how do we manage all of that? How do we govern all of that, right? So that's kind of all in there. And then we have leadership and negotiation. These are all required classes. And then we have
Yeah,
a fantastic set of electives for students to take from engineering. This is a unique opportunity. There are very few business schools where you can actually go take classes, elective classes, to deepen my understanding of the algorithms itself. Or
right.
if you think about the like large language models, or you think about electrical engineering, like mechanical engineering, nuclear engineering, you can actually make sure you understand better and deeper at the graduate level the some technology that you're going to use, automation, robotics, right, and all of that. So that's the blend we have for all the students.
Absolutely. Warren, before we go, I do imagine that, like NBT isn't as recognizable as like an MBA when you're kind of in the recruitment mode. But is this something that a kind of degree that you think more employers and more industry will actually be seeking out?
Absolutely. Absolutely. As I said earlier, you need someone who can come in and manage the technical talent. And that is only increasing as we go every day. Because as we've touched on across this conversation, technology is embedded into everything. It's embedded in every industry. 10 years ago, when I was at Time Warner Cable, if I could have hired somebody with an MBT, I would have because I was a head of product management. And that is a very technical component or a role within an organization like that. And this type of student coming out of this type of program would have been perfect to plug in. Um, I could have probably hired 5 or 6 of them if I could have.
Mhm.
So yes, I very much so see it. It's a new day, if you will. And that's not to knock. I have an MBA. It's not to knock MBAs, but um, in certain parts of an organization, this is the perfect fit.
Absolutely. Well, I think that's a great kind of closing remark on the conversation that it is a new day for sure. A big thank you to all our panelists. It was very insightful and educational, even for me. So thank you. And to our viewers, of course, if you want to learn more about Purdue's Master of Business and Technology, visit the Daniel School of Business website for all the details on the curriculum, the admission cycles, outcomes, etc. And of course, don't forget, you can find this webinar and many others like it at Poets and Quants YouTube channel, where we talk to a lot of business schools about a lot of programs, and of course at poetsandquants.com. We bring you the news, rankings, advice, and all things business education. So until next time, thank you for watching.